We're afraid of what people will think, or we're afraid we're not good enough, or we're afraid we're too much. And so we hold ourselves back. When we do that, we're muting ourselves. And there are too many people that are muting themselves in the world. And I, for so many years, was one of them. I've discovered the power of unmuting myself, of showing up in the world in a way that is joyfully expressed and boldly alive. That's something that has been so important to me as I've discovered how freeing it is to be unmuted, to unmute our body and to unmute our ideas and to unmute our desires, to unmute ourselves in relationships and at work, and to be our own advocates and to ask for what we want and need. The unmuted life is a life that is fully alive and fully expressed and confident and clear. And to me, it's the only way that I know how to live now. I know what it's like to feel confined and stuck and small and silenced. And I also know what it feels like to be expressed and alive and joyful and present and seen. And it's so much better of a life to be unmuted. And that is what I want to bring you into. Are you ready to unmute yourself? Let's make it happen. Hey there, everyone. Welcome, welcome. So good to see all of you here today. You might need to refresh your page. Maybe, Tim, if we can drop a note in the chat to tell folks to refresh their page. Sometimes LinkedIn and these streaming platforms aren't the best of friends, and they don't always talk to each other the way that we want. So you may just need to refresh your page to get it to show up. That intro is courtesy of Daniel Hall. Daniel Hall, very talented guy. And for those that are just joining us, I am Rachel Druckenmiller. I'm a keynote speaker and facilitator who also sings. And I work with organizations, leaders, and teams, and I help them to foster connection, courage, confidence, and compassion in themselves and in each other. And it has been a month of traveling, you guys. You've probably seen some of the posts that I've shared. I've been all over the United States, and I'm actually getting ready to go to Scottsdale, Arizona tomorrow for my last flight of the year, and I'm really looking forward to it. I wanted to just, as we're getting together on Halloween, I wanted to share, I, as an adult, have not really been super into dressing up in costumes. I know it's some people's thing and they love it. And I support that. And I get excited when I see the effort other people put into their costumes. But for me this year, this is the extent. This is the extent of my Halloween costume. Okay, you ready? Here it is. It says, this is my Halloween costume. I worked very hard on it. Okay. So that is the extent of it. That is the extent of my Halloween costume this year. That was a $20 t-shirt purchase. And welcome, Maria is here. I know we've got some other folks that are joining us. And again, if you're just joining us and having trouble with the feed, you may just need to refresh the page. Sometimes that can be a little bit of what the challenge is. So I just want to welcome everyone who's with us today. Maria, Michelle, Rich, good to have you back. Benjamin, Lisa, Nathan, welcome. Of course, Tim, our producer, Stephen, Michelle. Let us know where you're joining us from. And Stephen, I'm glad you appreciate my costume. Tremendous amount of effort, let me tell you. Again, feel free. Maria says, I've not dressed up in a real Halloween costume as an adult. That's fine. That's totally fine. We're on the same team with that one. And if you want to drop in the chat, what has been maybe one of your favorite Halloween costumes that you've had? What's been one of your favorite Halloween costumes as we're just gearing up today? Happy Monday. Welcome, Jennifer. Good to have you here. What has been a favorite Halloween costume that you've had? If you can think of one. I know my husband and I were college sweethearts, and I dressed up as Glinda the Good Witch, and he was the Cowardly Lion in a costume his mother made him. And then he left it in someone's in someone's apartment in college, and the Cowardly Lion is officially gone. So anyway, feel free to drop in the chat and let us know what has been a Halloween costume. It can be a form of unmuting ourselves, of showing our creative expression and something that's fun and playful and brings us joy. And again, this is the extent of what I'm going to be showing up with. So we've got Jean has joined us. Welcome, Jean. So feel free to let us know where you're joining from. We've got Van Buren, Arkansas. We've got Indiana. I know we've got Colorado. Careful, Giannis, careful. Someone might tell you it's not okay. Get a proper costume. Steven's joining us from New York. Tim, I know. Tim, you did send me that said my favorite Halloween costume is my shirt that says pretend I'm a goat. Maria is excited to see her son as a hot dog. I told him to bring some mustard. Perfect. And then Jennifer, they dress as characters from Hocus Pocus every year for your family event. That's the way to do it, man. To just like wear the same thing every year. Hi, Jamie. Jamie Nash. We went to college together. Interactive Hungry Hippos group costume. Oh, this is so fun. Thank you for dropping those in. Feel free to keep sharing them if you want. A couple announcements before we get to our guest, who I'm very excited about today. Our guest is someone that I've been connected to on LinkedIn for 4 years and have never actually had a full-on conversation with her. And I was like, well, why don't we just get on the show and have the conversation that we've been wanting to have? So that's going to be coming here in just a moment. If you want to check out past episodes, this is the 18th episode of the Unmute Yourself LinkedIn Live show. We also stream on YouTube and Facebook, and we're going to drop a link to my YouTube channel in the chat and the comments. If you want to check out past episodes, we've had some really amazing and wonderful guests on the show and more to come. So if you want to check out even the recording of this show and any past episodes we've had, you can do that on YouTube. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is I'm super, super excited about this. I know that you all know that I've been working on, I think I mentioned it at the last show. I'm working on my first original song, writing, composing, and producing my first original song. And welcome, Toby. Good to have you here. And this past Friday, we finished like the first draft of it. So I'm working with a guy named Leroy Heisen, incredibly talented musician and producer. And it's like a 3-minute song. And Tim, if you want to drop that Instagram link in, if y'all want to check out the first 10 seconds of it, not even the first 10 seconds, it's a 10-second snippet of the song. You can pull that up on Instagram. And I am very excited. I will be premiering it at some point here on LinkedIn. I just need to get the song finished and produced and recorded and all of that. And then I will perform it live at some point here. So heads up on that. Very, very excited. Giannis, you're super kind. But I'm very, very excited about it. And I would encourage you to think of what's a form of creative expression that brings you joy that you could tap into and that you could move toward in some way. A goal that I set for myself 2 years ago was that I would start working with a vocal coach again for the first time in almost 20 years to strengthen my confidence in my voice and to increase my skill as a singer and the way that I sing with heart. And I started doing that almost 2 years ago. And here I am like working on my first song. So super, super excited about it. And I would encourage you, again, when we tap into what brings us joy, it's something that makes us feel alive. And it's a way that we can unmute ourselves and show up more boldly alive and confidently expressed in the world. All right. That's all the announcements, friends. I wanted to, again, if you're just joining us, welcome to the Unmute Yourself show on LinkedIn. I am your host, Rachel Druckenmiller. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to today's guest. Amy Blaschka has made a career offering stories as a service. From her degree in film to 3 decades spent branding products, places, and people to founding her strategic writing practice, she's always understood the power of weaving a compelling tale, of having storytelling not just be something that is a hobby, but something that has turned into her profession. These days, she's a social media ghostwriter, and she helps founders craft their stories to communicate and connect better, magnifying their reach and impact. She writes engaging, original, and authentic career stories for her clients to position them for success and change how they perceive pay. And she and I have an appreciation for alliteration, how they perceive pay, partner with, and promote them. As a longtime leadership contributor to Forbes, she covers personal transformation and its impact on career growth. She also creates and shares original content through her popular Illuminate Me newsletter and active social media channels. So with that, we're going to bring Amy Blaschka to the stage. Y'all give her a warm welcome. Welcome, Amy.
Hey, Rachel. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, so excited that you're here. And again, as I mentioned, we've been going back and forth a little bit about, having a first conversation after we've been connected on LinkedIn for 4.5 years. And then when I was like, oh, well, why don't I just reach out to her to like be a guest on the show? And then we'll just have our first conversation live in front of everybody else.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? Let's like invite people. It's like, I think when it comes to these conversations, people kind of want to be a fly on the wall when people are having conversations about the stuff that we're going to be talking about today. And so everyone here gets to do that. So I would love, first of all, to let everyone know where you're joining us from. And would love to hear any story that you want to share about a way that you once silenced, muted, held yourself back in some way, in a way that you've stepped into a more unmuted, bolder, confident, expressed version of yourself. Whatever that means to you, you can pick. So yeah, get us started. Where are you from?
Okay. Well, I am in the world headquarters of amyblaschka.com here I can touch the walls of my little home office here. I'm in Northern California. So I am in Pacific time zone, a few before you. And, this is where the magic happens for me. And I am so happy that now I can say with authority and fully believing in myself that I am a writer. And that's exactly who I am, what I need to be doing, and how I put my talents to their highest and best use. Now, that wasn't always the case, of course, because I used to hide a lot, and it's easy to do that. I didn't really fully step into embracing my creative talents until the most recent past. I will say I've been creative adjacent for many years. I was a branding consultant. I worked in advertising. And every time I tell somebody that I was doing that, they'd assume that I was on the creative side. They're like, oh, someone that knew me when I was a kid, the little shy kid who used to write stories, who colored in the corner, who painted, who did all the creative things. And then I'd say, oh, no, but I'm on the account side, or I'm doing the strategy, or I'm doing this, or I'm dealing with the clients, which I love people. So that was something that worked. And I just always thought that, either it was messages that I'd heard from well-intended adults when I was younger and, thinking, well, maybe I want to pursue this. Maybe I want to do something creative professionally. That's what I want my job to be. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, it's something practical is better. You want, even if they meant well by it, those messages stick, right? That, okay, so something creative isn't practical. It's not going to pay the bills. It's not really meant to be a profession. It's a hobby. So tamp that down. That's fine. You can do that when you're not working or whatever. So I went from being a very creative child and thinking I'm going to be a writer, I'm going to be a painter, I'm going to be something that is, what I would say a creative person, getting paid to be creative. So I went to college. I was a film major, actually, because I love the idea of the visual and the verbal together. I love the idea of working with a team to bring a story to life, right? And that's what a film crew does, right? It's not just a single person, it's everybody coming together. So that idea of collaboration, of that kind of cross-pollination, it really appealed to me. So, and while I was in school, I actually vacillated between having a visual arts major, which is the film, and a communications major, was really more the writing. And I even had an instructor, a professor in college, a creative writing instructor, who had pulled me aside after class and said, Amy, I really think you should consider changing your major, and I was like, nah, I was flattered, but I was like, nah, whatever, this and that, because still in my mind, at least if it was if I was a film major, maybe there was a job that existed on a film crew that you could get, so it was sort of that practical nature of something.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I graduate. Great. Good job. Shockingly, I couldn't get a job as a filmmaker, right out of school. So, it was like, okay, what do I do? And so, like I said, I was like, well, what's creative? What's like, where can I get a job? What's creative? So I ended up in the world of what I call agency land, right? So first working with a very small agency that did everything. So, marketing, advertising, some PR. It was like everything, which was great for a young sort of curious person who wanted to get their hands into everything and get their feet wet and get a little experience. And then I got a job at Young and Rubicam Advertising in San Francisco, and it is a very low level sort of person in there, but I felt like, okay. As I worked my way through, I kind of rose through the ranks on what they call the account side versus the creative side. So the person who's dealing directly with the clients, who is kind of interpreting the creative and the strategy and being able to kind of speak many languages. And I found that I have a talent for being like the liaison role, right? Being in the middle. So as much as I love the creative side, I could still do the strategy. And I really do love people and interacting with them. So that was like, okay, well, I'm doing this. So that felt a little better. And I did that for many years. And then fast forward, my husband and I were like ready to start a family. We did. And at the time when I was pregnant, I'm like, I can't, as a branding consultant, I was traveling all over. Right. And sometimes it would be, and I'm in California, so I might travel to the East Coast for a client meeting and travel back the same day. And these are the, obviously pre 9/11 days where you could, run to the airport, get in there and do that, whatever. So I did that. And then after that, I couldn't do that schedule. I knew I wouldn't be able to keep up with kids and stuff. So I took some time off. And then when I was ready to start working again, ended up in something I never thought I would do, which was being the CEO of a tourism entity, which people go, well, how does that work? Whatever. And I mean, it was more about telling the story of a destination, right? So same principles as branding, same about kind of sharing the best bits, inviting people in, to your world, whether it's a physical world or whatever. So I did that. And I love that because it was with working with a team. I had an amazing team, and I stayed in that role for like just about a decade.
Wow.
And it allowed me to build and grow, which is very important to me. And to kind of leave that legacy of making something better. The idea of transformation is super important to me. My why is inspiring transformation. So anything I touch, I want to make better. But as much as I could do that, that role got me a little farther and farther away from the creative Amy, right? And this is the thing that I think people struggle with, at least I did. You can be excellent at something, and I was as running that, small group of people and getting the funding, doing all these things, but I was dying inside because I really wasn't using the creative muscle that I really longed to do. So I was hiding behind that, hey, I'm a great CEO and I've got results and I've got this amazing team and all these wonderful things. But meanwhile, I'm like, but what I really want to do is write, which when you're doing this, why would you want to do that? And again, that's sort of those negative sorts of, well, that's not practical. That's stupid. Why would you do that? So after I left there, I struck out on my own and I was a consultant with the low-hanging fruit, which was other tourism entities. But I will tell you, Rachel, the final straw was the last thing I did as a consultant was an organizational audit. And that sounds as sexy as it comes, right? Now, did I do it? Was it great? Yes, it was amazing. I did a great job, but I was like, I can't do this anymore. And around the same time, this is when LinkedIn had started to change, when you could start sharing anybody, not just their, influencers, right? The titans of industry, start sharing content, which I started to do. And a friend of mine who was also sharing, and a well-established writer, we got friendly, and he was the one who said, Amy, stop hiding. And I'm like, what do you mean stop hiding? I'm out there. No. You're a writer. You need to write. Stop hiding. You got to stop. And it was like, and that was like the catalyst for me to go, yeah. And was it scary? Hell yeah, it was scary, right? But get out there, and it was that fear of, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. There are so many people better than I am, but I'll tell you what, it's not the best necessarily that succeed. It's the people that put themselves out there. They stop hiding, they unmute themselves, because it'll be messy, but your people will find you eventually. And it's really important to consistently show up, because if you give up it would be really easy for me to retreat back into kind of the safe, right? Predictable income, safe things. But for me, I know me now, and I can't imagine ever going back. So what I did was I started to write. I started to put myself out there. I called myself a writer, which
Mhm.
you think is like, oh, of course. Now no one would question that. But
Yeah.
until you believe in yourself, nobody else will, right?
Mm.
But when you start saying, "Yeah, I'm a writer and I do this," and yes, Brian Schulman, your vibe attracts your tribe. Thank you. It's true. And little shift, that stop hiding, that's like the best two-word advice, career advice I've ever received, because it
Mhm.
also translates to other areas, right?
Yep.
Because when you're unafraid, and you know this, right, you're
Mhm.
unafraid to just be unabashedly you. And it could be that, I have a few decades of life experience too. I'm at a
Sure.
point where I don't really, if you don't like me, that's too bad, because I'm a nice person.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
mean, it's like there's a quote that I have on my wall. I seriously do, and I don't want to move my laptop because it'll screw
Yeah.
everything up. But
Sure.
what it says, you are something specific to a special few. And
Mm.
that's from my tourism days. This is how old it is, and it's a yellowing piece of paper, literally taped to my office wall, so I won't forget. And it's a gentleman named Sasha Strauss who said it, and he was talking about branding and kind of destination, but it really applies to personal branding too, and it applies
Yeah.
to just if you remember that there are folks out there who will they'll receive your message, they'll get what you're trying to say, and
Mhm.
there are those that don't. The ones that don't, just let them go, right?
Yeah.
And that it was hard to accept that at first, because I won't say I'm a people pleaser, but I feel like, well, why wouldn't you like me or what I have to say? Because I'm generally like, I'm a good person. Like, I really try to be a good person. But there are some people that just for whatever reason, nope, not
Yep.
happening. And I've learned it's more about them than it is about me. And I wish them well, just
Yeah.
whatever, sort of
Mhm.
thing. So I mean, now I'm at a place that I feel completely unmuted,
Mhm.
that I feel, you know, I'm 100% authentically Amy Blaschka,
Yeah.
and I'm okay if you don't like that or me. That's okay.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other vision to see, but I mean, it was really that switch of getting that little encouraging nudge, but then
Yeah.
more importantly, changing the stories I tell myself, right?
Mhm.
Because those are the things that resonate in your head. And
Yeah.
now the story is, yeah, I'm a writer. Yes,
Yeah.
I am a creative. I am a successful creative. Yes, I am
Mhm.
a professional creative.
Yes.
And yes, it is viable. It's not just a hobby.
Yeah.
It's not an afterthought. It's not it is what it is, and it's me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes. I mean, 100%. I think there's so much like alignment and Brian's so sweet. Brian, Amy is like Amy lights up everyone's life.
Aw, you're so sweet.
What's that song? It's like you light up my life. I don't know, something. But
It is. I
like
wish I could sing, and that's what I would say. Yes.
something like that. It's true. I think a lot of us, the stories that we received, and it could be one comment. It doesn't even have to be like a history of people
Mhm,
saying a thing to us. It could be one thing like you drew a drawing, you came
mhm.
home from school, you were 9 years old, someone told you it was ugly, and you
Yep.
decide from that point on that you cannot draw.
Mhm.
Like it can just be our words have such power at
Oh,
any point. Our words have power. Hi, I'm a writer, right? It's like writing and speaking. You realize that's what you're doing is like you're channeling. You're regardless of how you're doing is like we're channeling words in a way that inspires and impacts and moves people in some way
yeah.
to make a change, to have a
Mhm.
realization, to think or do something differently, and to your point, sometimes all it takes also is one phrase or one word to flip the switch. Like for you, stop hiding.
Mhm.
Right? Stop hiding. And
Mhm.
now you're like, oh, I am no longer hidden. I am no longer hidden. Hello. Right. Like,
Here I am.
right. It's like not going back in that box. Thanks. And it's something that I found that when we show up that way, like we've talked about, like for me, the part of the unmuting is singing, right? Which is something that for most of my life, it's funny. Let's see if I can grab it. I've shared it on here before. Hold on. Let me make sure I think these headphones are going to support this. Hold on. Okay. I might have shared this on here once before. I went to Catholic school for like 12 years. And we did this project when I was in 3rd grade. And so the top of this paper says like wanted by God and parents. And then, so if you see this person, treat with respect, she's a collector's item. And then on the bottom, we wrote interests, hobbies, and inner qualities, which I think what an interesting thing to have a 9-year-old do, right? To like think about that.
Yeah.
And so I had like singing, reading, sports, like singing, reading, skating, like the thing that kept coming up was like singing.
Yeah.
But the thing that I kept tamping down was singing in front of people because it's vulnerable to say, I'm going to pursue, not just going to pursue my creative expression, I'm going to let other people into that and to see it and to open myself to judgment and critique. And I've had people leave my sessions and be like, it was weird that she sang. Not for you. Not for you. I'm for the people that are like, I was moved. I got goosebumps. I needed to hear that. My eyes got teary. I don't ever cry. Like, that's who I'm for. Like, I mean, you have clarity on who you're for.
Yes. That's it. That's exactly it. And what you said, I mean, you can be vulnerable in many different ways. I think when you're brave enough to put your talents to their highest and best use. For us, that's in a creative expression realm. I think especially in those instances, because people can say, because it's really easy from the sidelines, right? To judge, to on social media, like, hey, why don't I do something that's really, in an arena where people can just, hide behind the keyboard and do whatever. But that's the thing, is easy to critique. But if you remember, it's like, but probably those folks that are critiquing, they don't have the courage to do what you're doing. They would never in a million years. They wouldn't say it to your face if they were standing in front of you, right? No. Those critiques. But they also, maybe they're a little jealous. Maybe they wish they could sing. Maybe they wish they could write, or maybe they can, but they are in a place where they're still letting those negative stories, take over. They haven't unmuted themselves. So there's a little bit of resentment. There's a little bit, and, I hope we probably, hope the same things. What we're wanting to do is have our words inspire positive change and have create a better impact for people. And I know when I work with my clients, or even just sharing content, on LinkedIn or other platforms, the most meaningful, highest compliment that I could get is somebody either in the comments or sending me a message saying, what you wrote, that really helped me see things differently. It made me think differently, or it gave me the courage to, step out of my own shell, to do whatever. And, people think probably that I'm saying this, oh, yeah, sure, Amy, whatever. Honestly, that's the thing that will, like, oh my gosh. I mean, I am a words of affirmation girl. Shocking. Yes. I know, as a writer, right? Of those 5 love languages. So you do. Yeah. So it's like to have somebody tell me, so, I mean, that's amazing. And the fact that, they took the time out of their day, because I know nobody has time. Everybody's got stuff going on, but to tell me, oh my God, so that's amazing. And to feel like, you're impacting positively somebody else's life, whether it's one-to-one or one-to-many, and we never know, right, who's listening. We never know who's listening. And I'm sure this has happened to you, is, you're out there regularly sharing yourself, sharing your wisdom, sharing your voice, literally and figuratively, right? And, you might get a message and it's like, yeah, I've been following you for months, or this, and you're thinking, I've never seen this person comment. I've never seen whatever, ever. And they just say, I just want you to know that, what you're doing is important, or it's this or whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So if anyone listening ever doubts themselves, ever doubts that what they have to say matters, that who really cares, who's listening, somebody is always listening, trust me, and if it's that one person, that one day that needs to have that one message received, that's enough. That should be enough to kind of spur you to action, to kind of share what's going on in your world.
Yeah, it's true. Because we don't think about the number of, for any of us, think about the number of people whose stuff we've been inspired by that we haven't told. You know what I mean? Right. So it's like, well, same with everybody else. So I mean, I think an invitation for everyone who's here today, whether you're with team replay or team live, what we would ask you to do, invite you to do, is send a note to somebody that you follow. If you're in this feed, you're active on social media in some form. Send a note to someone whose work has had a positive impact on you in some way, and let them know. It'll make you feel really good, by the way, because when we do something kind for somebody else, that's literally evidence-based from positive psychology, the quickest way to get ourselves to a place of elevated well-being and feeling good. So even if you're like, for whatever reason, the altruism part isn't jiving with you, like you'll selfishly feel better if you
You'll
do
feel better.
something kind. Like
Yeah.
you'll, and so take the time. It can be such a critical world for people to be in. And we're already predisposed to being so self-critical that it's like we don't need anybody else's commentary to further drive our insecurities that are already there. Even the people that appear most confident, like people might look at people like us who appear very confident. It's like we have our own insecurities and fears and like, right? I mean, come on, like,
we're human, it's like, not, despite being, I will tell you this, despite being a generally like optimistic, enthusiastic, happy person, I really am. And what you see is what you get with me. But man, I have my off days. I have my moments. I have times, or whether it's me directly or people within my circle, there's been a lot of bad shit going on lately, like just with people that I'm surrounded by. And I'm an empathetic person, but I feel it, so it's been really hard. But so I feel like that's even more of a call to action to kind of counteract the negativity that exists in the world, just in people's lives, on social media. It's really easy to be negative and that, but we all have an opportunity to contribute in one way or another, and doing it from a place of love and support and encouragement versus hate and fear. I'm going to always be team love and be over on this side. So, it's there's enough bad stuff going down that I don't need to be a part of that. No more of that. So
no, it's like, ain't got time for the drama. I mean, just do not. Just
no drama mama over here. Yeah.
Not here for it. Not here for it. And for words of affirmation, just so that we can, we can fuel that a little bit. Brian Schulman, who, by the way, who's just a really good person to be around when you're having a day. I was having a rough day like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I was feeling pretty down. And he has his What's Good Wednesday show, LinkedIn Live show on Wednesdays. And I was like, I know that if I show up to the show and I get on camera, I have a conversation with him in this community, that like I'm gonna feel better, even if it means me logging on Eastern time when it's like 10:30 because it's a Pacific, they're based on the West Coast, like you. But I'm like, I know I'll feel better, like being in community, being in connection, and of course walked away feeling awesome. And he said, Amy inspired and helped me get started on LinkedIn video, and I will forever be grateful for you and your heart, my dear friend. You've made such an impact in my life. So that was from Brian Schulman. So receive that, take that in.
Okay, I'm gonna cry now. I'm a crier too, so this is real, folks. My eyes are teary. Thank you, Brian. Aw.
So there's that, and then so there's that and good stuff that we see here. Oh, by the way, if you lose the feed, maybe we can let people know. Just refresh. Yeah, thank you. People are already. I love how the community is like, just refresh. They're supporting each other.
Just refresh. It'll work.
And Dr. Rose Schmidt, wonderful, wonderful human being. She asked, there's a question that came a little while ago of how do you overcome writer's block? Like, as somebody who's a writer, right? You're constantly creating content and constantly channeling ideas into something that's meaningful, that makes sense, that's, providing value in some way. So what do you do when you're in those spots?
So I don't get into those spots. There's a couple things that I do on an ongoing basis, right? I think the worst thing in the world is to start with a blank page, because you're like, oh man, that's when it's the worst. So I find that my ideas come when I'm not seated in front of my laptop, right? So I mentioned before we went on air to Rachel, this morning I take my dog for a walk around the park, and that's really a time where my brain can kind of do its little thing and it does these weird connection things. I always find inspiration when I'm not behind my laptop, right? So the trick is letting yourself kind of have those moments that you need the space for the ideas to flow in. I think the second thing is you need a method or some sort of system to capture those ideas. Because inevitably, if I'm in the shower, say, and I'm like, oh, you know what, that would be a good idea. If I don't immediately like scribble it, in the steam of the shower wall, do I get that down, or immediately jump out of the shower and type it in my phone, I will forget it. It's a lost cause, or, right when you go to sleep. So I have a few different methods to capture those ideas. So I'm a big fan of sticky notes. So I have sticky notes like all over. I have actual pads in my office, by my bedside. I have my notes function of my phone, my iPhone. I keep those things there. I have enormous, just off camera here to the left here, a whiteboard.
Mhm.
So, and then I also just have digital files where if it's, say it's a Forbes article that I'm like, oh, what am I going to write about? Something will come to me and I'll just start a draft. Or for my newsletter, I have probably 24 different prompts that have come up with their possible titles that give me kind of a riffing off point where I can say, oh, okay, this is what I want to talk about, and some sort of thing. I think that the biggest thing to sort of overcome writer's block is to first get yourself in the habit of just freely having ideas and not muting yourself or editing yourself on those ideas. Now, not every idea is going to be a winner, but if you let them all in, that idea that may not be great on first pass might lead to something else, which leads to something else, which ultimately becomes what you end up writing about. So be careful not to edit. The writing process isn't about taking things away. It's about adding things in, right? So let yourself do that. And it doesn't mean you have to use everything. That's what editing is for later.
Yes.
But I like to think of it as sort of the influx and additive. To do that. And, the other thing I will tell you that I've come to realize, at least about myself, which works, is adopting that mindset of that the ideas will come. They always do. And knowing yourself, for me, the best time for me to write and be creative is typically in the morning hours for me. So if I am struggling to finish a piece of writing and say it's like 3 p.m. my time, there's a point where I'm like, yeah, this is going to work. It's going to take me 3 times as long and it's going to be twice as bad. So I put it away. And I think giving yourself permission to walk away from something. And then I know the next morning I come right back to it and it's done within 20 minutes or it's something really quick. And so that's the other thing that works for me is knowing sort of, we're both Dan Pink fans, right? So knowing my chronotype, knowing when my best time is and also when my not so best time is. So kind of structuring my day in that way really helps in terms of kind of putting those things together. So that's a very long-winded answer, but those are sort of the things that I use to kind of mitigate that.
Yeah, it's like creating the conditions, right? It's like if I create the conditions, the Stephen Pressfield wrote a book like put your ass where you want your heart to be or something like that. His book titles are that's his latest one. I think it's called Put Your Ass Where You Want Your Heart to Be or something like that. So it's sort of like, where do you need to be inspired? Like I know a lot of times for me, because like so much of my technical work happens like here with this workstation set up and like when I'm doing presentations or whatever, when I'm doing client calls. And so I was submitting two talks for a conference next year. And I was like, I just need to go to, there's a Whole Foods nearby and upstairs they have all this seating and like a cafe area. And I was like, I had a songwriting session on Friday. So I was already in like my creative mode with, head and heart connected. And then I was like, I'm just going to go to Whole Foods and sit upstairs and hear like the buzz of all the people in the grocery store. And I'm going to open up my laptop and I'm going to be there for a set amount of time because I knew I had to be back for a phone call. So I was like, I'm going to have a max of 2 hours. These are the two things I need to get done. And I got them done and I got them submitted. And I was like, man, that felt good. Like, just knowing where you perform best. And there's a sheet I'm happy to share with anyone if you want to DM me for it. But you mentioned one of our favorite authors. We talked about the master of alliteration and he and his book When talks about something called the When Daily Planner. And in it, he has you track, right? When do you peak? When do you have an energy peak? So you're like morning, like my ideal time peak. When do you hit a trough? So that might be like for most people between like 1 and 3 right after lunch. And then when do you get a second wind? Like I know sometimes I can get really inspired at like 9 o'clock at night, or I'll be like, ooh, my brain, my body are starting to settle down. I'll be like, have a journal next to my bed where I'm like, I've got little notepads next to my bed where it's like, open it up, put it in there, get it out of your head. So it's not milling around and then you can go to bed. Like,
that's right. I know. Otherwise your eyes are closed, but your brain is still on. Yeah. I resemble that remark. Yes.
Yeah, it's a thing. Rich wrote a comment. Let me just pull, where is it? So a couple comments that I want to bring attention to. Rich said, any challenging problem will be easier to solve after a night's rest. Allow that break when possible to step away from the struggles with content or problem solving.
Yep.
Yeah. So that way, because there's connections that your brain makes when you step away that allow you to have literally a different perspective than you had when you were in the moment of stuckness.
That's right. That's right. Walking away, literally walking away, moving to a
Literally.
different environment is super helpful. Just
Yeah.
moving in general, I think, like whether it's like for me, I'm in upstairs, like walk downstairs or go outside to get the mail or get a drink of water or take the dog
Yes.
for a walk or whatever. Yeah, you need to get your little breathing room. Yeah, for sure.
Something. I think I always remember one of the things that he said that Dan Pink said in that book when was the formula for a perfect break. It was like 15 minutes away from technology, outside if you can, with
Mhm.
another person, or in your case, right, or like a furry friend, right? If it's a
Yeah.
furry friend, that also counts.
Yeah.
And moving your body in some way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like that combination of things, and just for 10 to 15 minutes can do so much to get you back on track.
That's right.
And so Tim was saying, he said, I was working on writing 3,000 words for a book chapter this week and I was stuck, got home from church, was in my car, had an idea in my head. So I started writing on my phone in my car.
Yes. Yes.
Have
That's
you done
amazing.
that?
Yeah, it's harder to do that way, but
Yeah.
that's the thing is if you need to have something to capture the ideas, right? I know some people are better vocally. They
Yeah,
think
I
out
am.
loud. So they'll grab their phone and do like voice notes, right?
Mhm.
And do it that way, and then get it transcribed or use some sort of like Rev or something like
Or
that to
Otter.
do it. Because I have a good friend. He says I will just go on a walk and I'll blah blah blah, talk it out essentially. And by the time he's done with the walk, he's got the stuff, he gets it transcribed, and it saves him. It just depends on sort of what your method is. I'm
Yeah.
much more like, I'm old school, maybe because I'm old, I don't know, but
Stop.
pen and paper. So I like, it's like it goes in the brain. I can talk about it, but it's more like I need to channel it through the hand. Even when I'm working with my clients, I'm listening and I'm taking notes, and it's sort of the process. The filter has to go through the brain and through out the hand.
Yes.
So, but the big idea is just capturing it and being in a place, putting yourself in a position where it's easy, because
Yes.
if it's hard, it's not going to happen, right? So,
Mm.
got to make it easy. Got to make it easy.
Yeah, what do they say? What gets easy gets done, right? Like what's easy gets
Yes.
done. It's like
Yeah.
just make it. I was recommended when I went through a professional speaking training 4 years ago to use Otter
Uh-huh.
as a transcription. So for anyone listening, it's otter.ai. And welcome,
Mhm.
Liz is here. She's also a fan of the pads and paper all around the house.
Yay.
And I found like one of the things they told us was like we used Otter to do stage to page. Because what can happen is sometimes when you're like going through this process of like coming up with a speech, right, or a talk that you're going to give, sometimes when you're like blank, to your point, blank Word document open or Google file or whatever, and you're just like, just type, make it. No, but when you get someone into telling a story, into just conversational speaking mode, there's certain things that unfold. And then from there, you can take that and turn that into something that you could perform in some way. But like,
Yeah.
getting it out. And I had a coach, based on what you said, I think you'd appreciate this, Amy. I had a coach named Mike Ganino, who's going to be on the show at some point in the future. And the phrase he always used, and it's even on his branding for his company, and he would always say, don't backspace yourself.
Ooh. Yeah. I might have to put that on sticky on my wall.
Yeah, don't backspace yourself. Because he's like, the brainstorming and editing are two fundamentally different processes. So shout out,
Yep.
Tim, if you want to tag Mike Ganino. He's one of my buds. And I always appreciated that because we have this tendency to do both at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like,
Yep. It doesn't work that way. Yeah.
No.
You're not going to be very productive. You're going to kill your babies before they even have a chance to come out. Like, don't do that. Don't do that.
Who said that phrase, to kill my darlings or whatever?
Yeah.
Who said that? I forget who said it.
Yeah.
But either way, and then hands-free voice memos in the car. Yeah. Any of these ways. And by the way, like, even if you're not someone who's consistently writing content, like these are practices that you can use to help you make sense of your experiences. Like, even if you walk away from an experience, walk away from the show and like open a voice memo and just as practice, be like, what was an insight? Just talk to yourself. What was an insight that you got from this conversation that was valuable? Like, that's where you can start, right? Something like that.
Absolutely. Okay. So Toby, I'm a visual person too. So I get this. And I also have, let me see, I have it like over here. I told you I have lots of things. So I do like scribble by hand, but I have like also these like whiteboard things that this one isn't filled. I have two that are filled. but you use, and I love color. So I have like all the color markers. I have all the color highlighters, Toby. So if I see something visual, I might make a little thing. And I often do little infographics too, because I feel like if I can connect the dots in a different way, that also helps with the creativity and in communicating, because people take in information differently, right?
Yeah.
So some people are audio people, some people are visual people, some people like to written word, they like to see it, some like pictures more, some like, so there's a multitude of different ways. But yeah, Toby, I'm visual too, so I get
Yeah.
it. And my brain is bizarre too. So we're part of the same tribe, apparently.
Well, and she may be sending you something. She may be reaching out to you after the fact to say she is a very talented artist. And I've encouraged her. We met through my previous job. And she works for an engineering firm. And oh, hey, Daniel Hall. Daniel Hall's the one that did the intro video. He's so talented. So hey, Daniel.
Hey, Daniel.
But Toby and I met like 4 years ago, and she was always somebody who's very introspective and very thoughtful person. If she leaves a comment on something, which she does frequently, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to like get my get ready to think hat on, because she doesn't just like, you would appreciate her. Like if she's gonna leave a comment, she's gonna really put some thought into it. And she also is a very talented artist. And I'm like, Toby, like, do you sell these cards that you create somewhere? Because they're so beautiful. I mean, like people would buy these, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I have several of her cards that she sent me that are absolutely stunning. Like for context, I posted a picture of a hibiscus like a year and a half ago on LinkedIn and wrote a post about it. And then like several weeks later, I had a box of handmade like watercolor art cards, like greeting cards sent to my house that had been a rendering of the picture that I had posted on LinkedIn that she did. So like,
hey, Toby, Etsy shop, mute that part of yourself. Come on,
we'll promote it. I'm already a huge fan. Like, so for whatever that's worth, if she would get reached out to by her, she's the real deal. I just want you to know. Liz, my idea from the flying turkeys across the road last week in rural Tennessee: pause and appreciate things and people and nature during the day. Oh, there were 8 turkeys running across the road in rural Tennessee. Yeah, pause and appreciate, notice. And there's a story behind that too, probably.
I love that, Liz. That's how my brain works. You see something bizarre and you're like, hey, I know, that reminds me. It's like, yeah. Totally.
Like, how can I use that? So what is your process? I'm curious, Amy. Like, I know you said getting yourself into those spots, having those routines. What is your process? Like, what does a typical day look like for you? I think people maybe wonder about something like that, right? A typical, I know it's like no day is typical, but curious.
The beauty of what I do is I don't have a typical day. That's by design. Yeah. I will say that I purposely I have recurring client calls. So I work with my ghostwriting clients on a monthly retainer basis, which means we have a weekly standing call, same day, same time. That's to encourage consistency, which I'm a huge, huge fan of. But those happen on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, because Mondays are never a good day for someone to have a recurrent, because there's holidays that fall. It just, don't do that. And the same for Fridays, right? And for my own schedule, I'd rather not have those. I like having a lead into my week. Mondays are typically when I would work on my business, right? Or do fun things like this. And I give myself, that day as a buffer if I have any of my own content that I need to finish up. So I do that. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, when I have standard, standing client calls, I will have a call with a client. It's a half hour long. They are phone calls, not video calls typically, unless they are international, which I have a few clients that are. And what I'm doing, I'm listening to my clients and hearing about what's happening in their worlds, because what works best is really what happens in your everyday life, professionally, personally. Right? It's those stories, those insights that think the turkey's crossing the road. Yeah. I mean, that would be a great thing if my client's like, oh, this. And sometimes they don't even realize what might make a great post. And we might just be having sort of that, hey, how's it going? And they're relaying a story about something funny or touching, something that happened. And I was like, okay, so we should write about that as it relates to leadership or this or this. Oh, okay. So those are pretty standard. And I like to do those between my hours of say 9, although I have some like 8 and 2, just because I know after 2, about after 3 o'clock, I'm start to, sort of down. But if I had my druthers, I'd have most of my mornings to myself to do my creative work and do what I need to do, and then ease into the day and kind of have a center part of my day focused on my client stuff, and then free up the rest of the afternoon to kind of do those things, like things that need to be done that aren't necessarily creative, just administrative things, or just like following up on some other stuff, kind of keeping, the wheels turning, so to speak. But that's how it is. And, other than the recurring clients, nothing else is really standard. Nothing is the same. That's by design. I think, for me, what I value most about being a solopreneur is sort of the autonomy that I have, and the freedom creatively, certainly, but also freedom of time. And, that's, like I said, I feel like I'm living a life by design, right? This is what I want to do. I can't imagine going back to what I was doing before. Could I? Yeah. Do I want to? No, not at all. So, it's probably morning creative for Amy, midday creative for other people, for clients, and then afternoon administrative things. And in between there, if I want to, like, I have a doctor's appointment or something, I have the flexibility to weave those things in too. So when I have my client calls, this is where it's happening, right?
Yeah,
this is
right.
very glamorous sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it works, it's not about having like some amazing office, because what matters most to me is what comes out of this, right? It's not about like, hey, look at this cool file cabinet.
Right. Hey.
Hey. It's more about the digital product that is shared either by my clients or by myself. So yeah. Do I write any long prose or mainly short pieces for clients? So I write both. Most of my clients, I'm writing their shorter LinkedIn updates. So was that like 200-ish words or something that they share? That's pretty much the baseline. They like that. And most of my clients I'm writing on LinkedIn, because what I say is go where where are your intended audiences gathering? Make it easy, right? If they're on LinkedIn, and most of my clients are B2B, so they want to share that in a place that their audience is showing up. So most of it is the short posts. I have 4 clients that I also, in addition to that, write articles for them. And it might be because they're part of a paid Forbes council, like Business Council, and one that was on Finance Council, or I'm writing for more industry specific things that they place themselves with their agencies. So I'm industry agnostic. So I'm not writing technical papers. I'm not writing white papers, that sort of thing. It's really generally about leadership. It's about sort of entrepreneurship, because most of my clients are founders, and their journeys, and kind of sharing that. And then some specific things in different industries, but more often than that, it's more about showcasing their thought leadership and how they move through the world as a leader of a company. And I do that.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think too, even just like having this conversation, like two things I want to mention. One, because of what came in the comments, I want to share a book. There's a life design course at Stanford University that's like one of their most popular courses. And there's a book called Designing Your Life, because Toby mentioned, she's like, Life by Design would be a great book title. There is a book called Designing Your Life.
I got to get that one.
Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. And it's really, there's a lot of, it's very much like a workbook, also like reading book. And it's based on their course, which is the most popular course offered at Stanford University about, about designing your life. So anyway, for anyone that's like, oh, this is jiving with me.
Yeah, I wrote it down.
That would be something for people to check out. So Designing Your Life. So
makes a note to check Amazon after. Yes.
Makes a note to check Amazon to do that. I think, it's interesting, even in my own, this is what we're doing. We're sharing insights and being helpful, and providing value is the hope. And Stephen confirms this. Designing Your Life is a fantastic read. Hey, there we go. I think as somebody who can have trouble with consistency, because my schedule is so different, like I'm going to Scottsdale tomorrow morning. I'm going to be gone until Thursday. I get home at 8:00. I was in Michigan last Tuesday and Wednesday. Like there is no consistency to any week that I have, because of the nature of my work as a speaker, of like, you've got to be here at this date because that's the day the conference is. And so I started on LinkedIn. I started writing articles on LinkedIn in 2015. I wrote my first article on LinkedIn in 2015. And then about a year ago, I started a LinkedIn newsletter that has just maybe about 8,500 subscribers at this point, called Unmute Yourself, because that's what I'm all about. But I have not been consistent with writing on there. Like for a period of time I was, and I was like every other week. And I have so much to say. I mean, I do talks about this topic of unmuting yourself like all the time. And
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
have so much to say that I just haven't like put into an article. I put it in posts I share. Like, I don't think anyone, if they heard the phrase unmute yourself, would be like can maybe, associate it with me, because that's what I talk about all the time.
Yeah.
So my company is called Unmuted. I really am throwing all my eggs in this basket, because it's something that is for me a reflection of stepping out of that place of where I was so much of my life, of being muted. And so this is my
Yeah.
declaration of like, I am unmuted.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like for someone, for someone that might be in that situation of having all these things milling around in their head, of things like, for me, it's always, I have too many ideas of things that I want to share. And I have too many. I mean, I have like 15 to 20 probably LinkedIn posts that I've already drafted, written out, that I just haven't shared yet. They're fully formed. They've got the pictures associated, got everything done. And sometimes I just get in my head with the overwhelm of it. And I'm like, do the damn thing, Rachel, because you know that when you share these things, that it moves people and it really helps them. And you want to continue to get your thought leadership out there around this thing that you talk about so often. But I haven't posted an article through LinkedIn since June.
Okay. Well, I mean, the obvious answer is just do it. Right. You have to like do that.
Set a timer for an hour and do it. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. The thing that I tell my clients too, and I call it my power trifecta, is clarity, consistency, and discipline. Right. So clarity, obviously, you clarity of why are you doing this? Why are you sharing something? Right. The overall clarity of why am I here? What am I doing? Why am I writing, sharing content? But it's also the clarity of knowing sort of what the one clear message will be in this piece of content, knowing, what are I call them the 3 buckets. So because like I do have a lot of ideas too, but if you can think of kind of your top 3 content buckets, and I do this with my clients, usually with my clients, and one of them is leadership, which is broad enough to incorporate a lot.
Yeah.
But some other ones might be more, B2B or B2B marketing, or it might be innovation, or it might, whatever the case may be. And then sort of put those things that you've already written them. That's the hard part, is putting them under those buckets. And then if you're not already doing this, especially if they're already done, if you can use like a scheduler to pre-schedule them out for you, that takes a little time up front, and that's not as scary as, when do I do, and then it's just done, and you know that it's happening. So that's a way to do it. With the articles and the newsletters, I mean, it may just be repurposing some stuff that you've done earlier. Some of these things, especially if you see the same themes resonating with folks, that you just do it. And this is the thing we forget, I think, as content creators, is, we've seen it a million times. So we think everyone's tired of hearing this, but people need to take the message in a few different ways and in many different times. And especially if it's, weeks or, months apart, it will feel fresh and new. And it's okay to do that, because what it does is it just, solidifies sort of your messaging. And people, I really like that, and that's resonating with me. And they're not going to be like, she shared that 3 weeks ago. They won't do that. Nobody is keeping track, right? As much as we are. So I think it's okay to do that and repeat on the themes. It might be the same but different, slightly told a different way, or a different story that maybe introduces that concept. But that's what works for me. And I think it's getting out of our own heads enough to worry, oh my gosh, I already did this, or I shared this, or whatever. Because once you're out of that cadence of sharing, it's tough to get back in. But once you're in it, and you just one thing after another. And for me, that means I'm always writing. I am ahead with my content, in some cases months, but there's always little nuggets that I have to fill in. And what I try to do is, I'll write a Forbes article, and from that Forbes article I create like a slide deck or something else that's just a visual in a different way. And maybe many months after that, it becomes a LinkedIn newsletter issue, right? And it just, so there's a way to kind of recycle that, or you can pull different things. So it's repurposing and using that. And when you've amassed a huge amount of content, that's smart, right? It's just being efficient with stuff and keeping track of that. So, yes, the right thing to do, Rachel, just do it, right?
Here's my, you and everyone that's with us, I will commit. I've got like a bunch of time on a flight this week. I will commit to having an article, since it's been since June. So we're talking like almost 5 months. maybe 4 technically. I will commit to having an article published on LinkedIn before the end of this week.
Okay, everyone, you heard it here. Okay.
I'm going to share what I've been sharing with these groups all about like ways to unmute yourself at work. Cause I haven't actually like written that article, even though I talk about it all the flipping time. And I've done it in like posts, long form posts. I do a lot of long form posts on LinkedIn, but like write stinking article. So I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to ping you and say, I did it. And so there's some accountability here. And if y'all who are with us right now, Liz and Steven and Dr. Rowe and Tim is hilarious. Tim, breaking news, Rachel. Tim is like a journalist. He's a journalist, right? And a very talented soul. Well, I just want to say we are at time. I want to respect your time.
Okay.
Can you believe I know, like we could talk for another hour easily.
That went fast, yeah.
It's like fun things generally go by quickly. Anyway, so I just want to say thank you, Amy, for being here. And I appreciate what you shared about the reminder to be consistent and to keep showing up and to bring ourselves out of hiding and into a space of being seen and heard. And thank you for sharing your process. I know that quite a few people I have to go back and look at all the comments people made, but quite a few people were commenting on that. They're like, oh, I love the clarity, consistency, and discipline. Dr. Rowe said that. And you know, just, Amy says, love this time. My first Amy and Rachel live. This is I bring on guests every other week, and Amy was gracious enough to come on the show this week and be a guest. So this is, by the way, everyone, this was our first conversation together. I
think it went okay.
I think so.
We like each other.
I think, there's some connection there. And Steven goes, woo, that was amazing, guys. So there's your words of affirmation. I appreciate you. I appreciate the way you show up consistently and how you inspire and even support through your work other people to do that. We're going to drop your website link. Tim's going to drop that in the chat, the website link, your LinkedIn profile, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff we will drop in the comments, and they are on the ticker at the bottom so that people can get connected with you. This is a very active community. So again, I would not be surprised if you've got a bunch of new fans that are going to be following and supporting your awesome content on here. So thank you again for being a part of this experience. I am very, very grateful. And that's how we do it, Liz. Organic and spontaneous. Like,
yeah. Nice. Thank you for having me, Rachel. And thank you, everybody. This is like such like a warm hug, right? Everybody. It's like, I love all you. You have a really great community, Rachel. So well done. And good job, people. Love you all.
Thanks. Yeah, they're the best. And for anyone who missed it, this is my Halloween costume today. This is my this is my Halloween costume. I worked very hard on it. Okay, so no judgment needed. So thank you again. We hope you all have a wonderful unmuted week. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you back here in 2 weeks for the next episode of Unmute Yourself. Have a great week, everybody.
Halloween. Okay, bye. Thanks.
Bye.